The Tale of the Phantom Coach. When thinking of Whitby, the image of the Abbey comes to mind, and with it, the tale of the Phantom Coach. Atop the 199 Abbey steps stands St. Mary's Church. When the moonlight hits its highest windows, they shift into what looks like bloodthirsty red eyes looking down over the town. Such a view from his hotel room window cemented Whitby as the home of Bram Stoker's Dracula. It is here where on dark cold nights the sound of horses' hooves pounding the cobbles can be heard approaching from the darkness, until from the air a barely visible horse-drawn carriage materializes, charging into the church's grounds, the driver ferociously whipping the horses. As the carriage hastily approaches, it suddenly stops outside the church entrance, horses rearing on their hind legs before they disappear. In this version of the tale, it is not known why the figures return, or how often. However, there is another variation of this tale, commonly shared in the seaside town, providing possible answers to such questions. A version referred to as the Bar Ghost Coach, in which the headless horses pulling the coach halt beside the graves of recently departed sailors, whereby the coach's skeletal passengers gather on the third day following the funeral to pay their respects, before collecting the corpses to unite them with their fallen brothers as the coach continues to the end of its path, disappearing as it runs off the cliff's edge into the sea. The Bar Ghost. St. Mary's Church is a particularly haunted spot within local legend, with accounts of the Bar Ghost Coach being accompanied by a large black hound, referred to as the Bar Ghost Hound. However, the hound's most well-known stories are unrelated to the coach. Believed to be a phantom omen of death or living hellhound from mythology, the Bar Ghost Hound gave inspiration to Sir Arthur Conan Doyle's The Hound of the Baskervilles, alongside similar tales from towns across the country, as well as receiving a mention in the form of a huge black dog running from the ship in Bram Stoker's Dracula. Described as a ferocious man-eater, it is said that the Bar Ghost prowls the North Yorkshire moors surrounding Whitby, using its black fur to blend into the night. Therefore, should you find yourselves on these moors and hear a wolf-like howl, beware, as the Bar Ghost's howl signals that either you or a loved one will soon pass, a fate you cannot escape, though some have tried. Reverend J.C. Atkinson recounts the story of a man stumbling through the cemetery of St. Hilda's Church in the nearby town of Egton after a night of drinking, where he was confronted by a donkey-shaped bar ghost blocking his path. Thinking himself clever, the man followed a nearby lane and jumped into the churchyard from there to thwart the bar ghost. However, in the dark of the night he was unaware of the open grave nearby and fell to his death. This begs the question of whether the bar ghost is merely sending a warning and is not to be feared, or is the man-eating beast of nightmares. Evidence of the latter is believed to have been unearthed in nearby Kettleness in 1951. The archaeologists were excavating a Roman signalling station and allegedly discovered the skeletal remains of a man curled together with a huge dog, with the creature's large jaws curled around the man's throat and stab wounds from the man's blade in its body. Is this creature the beast from legend, whose ghost may be wandering the moors today, or simply a large hunting dog? I guess we'll never know. St. Hilda and the Abbey's Bricktop Nun. Built in 657 AD and founded by St. Hilda, the Whitby Abbey is one of the most famous sites of historic ruins in the world. With its intimidating presence looming over the town, it's easy to believe that the stuff of nightmares resides here. Such a commanding presence made it the perfect home for Bram Stoker's Dracula, for which the Abbey is well known. However, other tales of horror are captured within its walls, such as the founder, who is believed to peek from the highest windows on the sleepy town below, and whose presence is noted in Stoker's novel itself. Joining her within the Abbey's walls is Constance de Beverley, a nun who was bricked up alive after her broken vows of chastity were brought to light. Visitors who linger past sundown and listen closely allegedly still hear her pleading cries for release. The Screaming Tunnel. Perfectly framing the Abbey is a small tunnel that, though beautiful, becomes ominous under the cloak of darkness. This tunnel is more commonly known as the Screaming Tunnel, and is the tunnel Lucy walks through in Stoker's novel whilst in a trance, walking to the Abbey to meet Dracula for the first time. However, the tunnel is not just ominous and foreboding in the pages of a novel. Sightings of a dark figure blocking the end of the passage have been shared for generations, as have claims of a ghostly hand accompanying people through the tunnel. Is this ghostly figure the one behind the disembodied screams coming from the tunnel? Or are they the screams of his victims? The Western Lighthouse Keeper. Seaside towns often feature a lighthouse in their skyline, safely guiding ships through the waves. Whitby famously has two, standing at the end of their own piers. Though it is the Western Lighthouse that steals tourist attention with its paranormal presence. Often featured in horror films and stories, the isolating and confined nature of the lighthouse makes the setting ideal. This story, however, is not one of murder or isolation damaging the mind, but one about a heroic lighthouse keeper simply doing his job. One stormy night, strong winds blew through Whitby and rain poured. The choppy sea was ideal weather to claim the lives of many sailors and their ships. Seeing the weather outside absence of light, the lighthouse keeper knew he could save many lives in braving the storm to turn on the lighthouse light. And so he put on his coats and boots and headed to work. By the time he reached the lighthouse, his coat was dripping wet. Rain droplets covered the stairs as he climbed towards the light, yet the lighthouse keeper paid them no mind as he focused on the job at hand. Soon, he climbed the final step and turned the light on, before staring out at the open ocean, safe in the knowledge he may have just saved a fair few lives. Turning to head home, he continued to think of those out at sea, and once again failed to notice the dripping water from his clothes and the puddles he'd left on the stairs on his way up. Until his boot could not grip the stair beneath him and he slipped. Unable to stop himself, the lighthouse keeper continued to tumble, picking up speed as he did so. By the time he reached the bottom of the winding stairs, he'd broken his neck and died. The Western Pier has been open to the public for many years now, and tourists frequently climb those same winding stairs. Some for the view that awaits them at the top, and others to catch a glimpse of the brave lighthouse keeper. Though some say, only if you too brave a journey to the lighthouse on a stormy night, can you be witness to his ghost continuing his duties to those at sea. The story is not yet over, however, as others believe he may have a mischievous side that sees him frighten visitors, while others say he can be malicious and wants to trip others to have them join him in death. Such speculations may have arose from the famous encounter one girl had with his ghost. In the 1950s, a young girl on holiday with her parents visited the lighthouse. Though the climb to the top was tiresome, nothing eventful happened, until the girl had enough of marvelling at the view at the top and skipped ahead of her parents down the winding stairs. As she neared the bottom of the steps, she let out a scream that echoed up the lighthouse, and she ran to her parents asking for help. Flustered, she led her parents down the stairs, claiming to see a man lying on the floor, neck twisted at the bottom. But when they got there, her parents didn't see anything. Was this the ghost of the old lighthouse keeper trying to scare her? Maybe. The Oysterman of Whitby. Moving away from the coast and into the town, there have been many reported encounters with deceased residents wandering alongside the living. One such ghost is the Oysterman. Though now thought of as a delicacy, oysters were once commonplace in the UK town, and as such, the Oysterman was a familiar figure to the locals, whom he offered his oysters to on his walks through the streets. Unfortunately, Whitby's Oysterman is said to have been plagued with guilt one night in the Golden Lion that left him wandering the streets peddling his wares for all eternity. The story goes that the Oysterman would walk from pub to pub shouting, "Oysters alive, ho!" attracting customers for his wares, and one night was beckoned into the old pub by a group of rowdy men who upon entry began insulting him. Knowing he'd make no sales, the Oysterman turned to leave, muttering a quiet oath as he went. Hearing the oath, the men snatched the oyster basket in a fit of rage and threw it onto the fire, before grabbing the Oysterman, threatening to reunite him with his basket. Though small and terrified, the Oysterman was not unarmed. Tucked into his pocket was a tiny blade used for opening oysters, a blade his attacker quickly felt being plunged through his heart, taking his life. This fateful night would haunt the Oysterman, as even though he was no killer, and found as such on trial, he could never forgive himself for taking another's life. And so his cry of "Oysters alive, ho!" was forever changed, as he continued to walk selling his wares, always avoiding the Golden Lion, a path he still travels today. So on quiet nights, you may still hear this cry. Just make sure you don't insult him. The Landlady of the White Horse and Griffin. While Whitby's living locals may be friendly people who celebrate the unique, its dead don't all share this sentiment. In the centre of the town stands the White Horse and Griffin, a friendly pub. It was once ran by an unsavoury character. In the 19th century, this cruel woman was incredibly unpleasant to any customer she took a dislike to. Unfortunately for her customers, she judged them with just one look, meaning it was easier to fall out of favour than it was not. After slipping on the outside steps one night, the unpopular woman cracked her head and suffered a slow death alone on the cobbles. A death that haunts the pub and its customers to this day, who, if disliked by the old landlady, will find themselves in for an unpleasant visit.